And I thought I would just take a moment and, as prelude, talk about the efforts that Mr. Smith has put over the years, not just to the issue of human rights, but in particular identifying those most at risk, identifying those who are held captive in prison, and taking the personal effort to go and try to visit them in these horrible conditions which they find themselves in. I remember him saying to me once, can you imagine what it is like for someone who's a prisoner because he attempts to speak out for some modicum of free speech or for religious liberty, and he finds himself there in confinement, not knowing when they open that door, when they come for you, what they might do to you next, not knowing what type of torture might be applied. It takes a strong constitution for a member of this House, year after year after year, to continue to go to bat for those who are held in captivity, those who are subject to show trials and then disappear. And part of his efforts has been to pass this particular legislation because he's concerned with the magnitude of what is happening in Vietnam, but also what he has seen in his own eyes with respect to some of those victims. Over the years, the Foreign Affairs Committee has held many hearings on this subject. And if these hearings have had one consistent theme, it's the deterioration of human rights. And I think this is the thing we really find most regrettable, that at a time when we hoped that Vietnam might change its policies, it actually has regressed. And we've heard from the witnesses of the use of the government by government agents, by militias, some call them thugs, who use everything from electric batons to metal prods to beat those who are demonstrating in Vietnam and who are in the process of speaking up for religious liberty or speaking up for the rights of free speech. And now it's gotten to the point that any young person who dares to blog those words, freedom of speech, those words, democracy, anyone who publishes material promoting democracy or criticizing totalitarian rule faces so many years in jail. It is so disproportionate, it is so ridiculous to put a young person in jail for 6 or 7 years because they blog on democracy. But the thing that I think Chris Smith and I and others here, Elliot Engel, find so objectionable is the physical abuse that they are also subject to in confinement. So, as we say, religious freedom is also under attack with freedom of speech. Residents of Can Yo, Da Nang have suffered severe violence. I've seen some of the photographs of the consequences of these beatings with batons and electric rods during a May assault at the hands, again, of Vietnamese government officials. And again, this was because the parishioners attempted to protect their historic Catholic cemetery from seizure by the government. We have over 350 Mountain Yard Christians who remain imprisoned for their beliefs, and other religious groups. When I was in Vietnam, I talked to the leader of the Unified Buddhist Church of Vietnam, the Venerable Thich Quang Do, who was under house arrest, and Ly Quang Liam, another, well, he was the leader of the Hoa Hao Buddhists at the time. He has subsequently, in a protest, been beaten so badly, I don't think he can carry on a conversation today. The Cao Dai Buddhists face severe persecution from the government, the communist government there. So, what brings us here tonight is that Vietnam has actually taken steps backwards. As we heard from the witnesses who testified before our committee, in the first 6 weeks of this year, 40 dissidents have been convicted in show trials, more than all of last year. That's how bad things are deteriorating, and that means that the communist government is not only eclipsing their past bad performance, But paradoxically, the government is also actively pursuing a seat on the UN Human Rights Council. That is why we need to take this step, and why passage of the Vietnam Human Rights Act is so important, and why we've got to use what leverage we have. And part of that leverage is non-humanitarian U.S. assistance to Vietnam. And we do that unless the Vietnamese government improves its respect for human rights to meet specified requirements. Let's send a message to that regime that the status quo is unacceptable. This bill does that. I strongly urge its passage, and once again, I strongly commend and thank its author for his perseverance on this issue. And I will reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman